So yeah, like I was saying, like I was talking about, I think I was talking about algebra. I've never ever used algebra or Pythagoras theorem or any of these other things that I've learned in school when it comes to maths. Because obviously the further you get, especially in secondary school, the more you start to learn about more kind of like in-depth topics and stuff like this in regards to maths and all these different things, if you see what I mean, right? But I've never ever in my life have I used Pythagoras theorem or algebra outside of school, if you see what I mean. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm quite good at maths, to be very honest with you. Maths is one of my topics that I did relatively well in. But I don't really, today you use it for you only use basic maths today. You either subtract, you either have subtraction, addition, multiplication, or division. That's the only type of maths you really ever use today. If you see
I
what
think the only maths that I've ever really used,
yeah.
like all the jobs I've ever done, like removals or what else I've done cleaning before, whatever.
Yeah.
I never really needed to use maths, apart from when I got paid at the end of it, to work out how much I got, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only time.
And that's what I mean. So that's what I mean. That's what you need it for, to ensure you can add up your hours and make sure it all makes sense. You make sure you get paid correctly. You know what I mean?
I was pretty good at maths, actually. I wasn't very good at English, okay, but maths I was pretty good at, and art I was good at. Very good at art. But when I look at maths now, honestly, if somebody wanted me to sit down in their classroom for an hour or so and do some maths, I'd say no, thank you. I'm not interested. Do you know what I mean? I'm just not interested. I don't want to do any more numbers. Do you know what I mean?
It's unnecessary.
In a kind of way, you think about it.
Unless you're going to use it for your career or to build something or to design something or whatever else like that, well then what is the point outside of just being, as long as you know your basic maths to ensure that you're getting paid right and every business deal and everything else that you're doing or whatever that you're making sure you get paid correctly, then that's all that really matters, as long as you can,
Well, like I look at living things out there, like all the birds, all the insects, whatever. And really, you think about it, they're quite, like not all of them, but when they get mature, they're quite wise. They know how to survive.
Oh, of course, yeah.
They know how to enjoy themselves. Really, especially a lot of animals and birds do. They have good fun. Do you know what I mean? Whereas humans, I find they don't know how to enjoy themselves, and they've got everything, they've got TV, they've got this, they've got that, but they're still not happy, a lot of them, do you know what I mean? It's still not enough, do you know what I mean? Like I say, we're a lot different to animals and birds, completely, we look at things different, we value everything, animals don't do that one at all, they don't value anything, And I don't know whether humans are wise as we think we are, if you see what I mean, where you think like, here we are, human race on planet Earth, and when you watch the news you think, goodness me, it's all going wrong out there, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Humans are not very good, they're not very intelligent because they're always at war. And,
oh, of course,
you know what I mean? They're always
yeah.
destroying each other in a kind of way, where animals seem to be living in peace, when you think about it, and birds.
Yeah.
You sometimes I walk over to the park there, and I go to the pond there, and there's lots of birds there, but lots of different birds, crows, seagulls, and they're all mixing together. They're not like fighting like we do, you know what I mean? They argue a little bit over food.
Of course.
If you put a bit of food down, they'll race towards it. And there's not really any blood, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think humans and, I wish everybody was educated, to be honest with you, because wisdom's not about knowing like all the birds, I don't think, knowing all the fish. It's knowing how to be compassionate. It's knowing how to respect.
Yeah.
It's knowing how to look after yourself. And how to be independent, and cook for yourself.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's also knowing how to listen to yourself, your inner self,
Being in tune with yourself.
Yeah, because it's sort of, your body's always talking to you,
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, like, a lot of people, they're distracted because they're watching things and doing this and doing that, and they're not listening to their body enough. Do you know what I mean? You know, and your body's very important.
Of course, yeah, yeah.
And if you're not listening to it and doing what your body wants, you know, if you know what it tells you to do, basically, you know, you're going to suffer for it, basically, you know.
Of course, yeah.
If you had enough sleep, for instance, and things like that, you know. And I think this is all to do with wisdom, just sort of like knowing really sort of how to enjoy the moment, really, you know, and how to understand everything in life in a kind of way, I think. You know, I don't understand everything in life, you know, I still got years of wisdom to learn yet.
Of course, yeah.
You know, but I do feel pretty wise in life for the age I'm at, whatever, you know. I feel wise for, you know, like say, you know, like wisdom doesn't, you can't define wisdom, age doesn't define it, does it? That's one thing you said once.
Yeah, age does not define wisdom, yeah, you know.
And you could be like...
Some people, you have some conversation with some older people, mate, you could tell, like, you know, they're really, you know, age did not, you know what I mean, just because they're older doesn't mean they're necessarily wiser, you know.
Well, some people have been reading papers all their life, you know what I mean? And then, you know, I think like a person that doesn't read at all is wiser than a person that reads papers all the time, in a kind of way. Yeah. You know, because a lot of papers you get misled completely. And I think there's all kinds of people out there.
Yeah.
And you can be 10-year-old and be pretty wise at that age.
Oh yeah, true, yeah.
Pretty
well, like
wise.
I think, like I was saying to you last time, like my son is 10 now. My son's about to, you know, my son just turned 10 about a week ago, and things that I was doing when I was 10 years old, 11 years old, like I just, you know, the difference, like you said, how we're all so different. Like by the time I was like 13, 14 years old, I was kind of living a life. I was kind of living like a grown-up in a way, in lots of aspects already, you know, at that age, at that young age, you know. Like I'd already been through so much and had so much life experience and shit by such a young age that I already felt like I was grown by like 13, 14. But my son is 10 years old now, and he's had obviously a completely different life that I've kind of had, you know. And it's like, you know, I can just tell, like he's, you know, he won't be where I was. How do I explain it? What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is he won't be at 13, 14 years old. He won't be. I've had as much life experience as I would have had, as I did by that age.
Not a rough time.
If you see what I mean.
Yeah, had a rough time.
If that exactly. So he wouldn't have experienced any of those things and that kind of shit. And you know, I think he would just have, he would just have a better life. You know, I think obviously that's the goal as any parent. You know, you always want your kids to have a better life than you had. You know, that's always the goal, isn't it? Always the aim. You know. Yeah.
You can sort of like learn to get wiser by looking at other people.
Oh yeah.
I'm sort of like striving to get wiser in my life, to be honest with you, you know, because if you're wiser in life, I think you're going to be happier in life, you know.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of different sort of elements of wisdom in a funny way, you know, like, again, I spoke about it a few weeks ago, cooking, you know. Are you wise at cooking?
Yeah.
I mean, wisdom is a bit like being intelligent, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
And you got your knowledge, you know what you know or what you've learned, and some people haven't learned a lot, you know, at all. Well, I feel I've got quite a lot of knowledge in a kind of way, you know, like I know maths.
Yeah.
I know science a little bit, do you know what I mean? And physics, English I've caught up on, I feel. Still learning about that, you know, my vocabulary I want to improve in the future, you know, get a bit wiser, do you know what I mean? You know, with that. Art I'm pretty good at, but you know, any artist can always improve.
Of course, yeah, of course, always.
You know, yeah, even the best artists could get better.
Yeah. Well, the more you practice, the better you become.
Yeah.
You know, you never get perfect. No one's ever completely perfect, but the more you practice, the better you become. You know.
And I think like even the wisest person in the world can fall over and make a mistake today. Do you know
of
what
course,
I mean?
yeah.
So, and
Well,
be in hospital.
Even like just using footballers as an analogy, like even the best footballer in the world has a bad day, has a bad game, where he's giving the ball away, not passing it correctly, all of his passes were off target, didn't score any goals, missed every time he got the opportunity to try and score, he missed. You know what I mean? And some people might regard him as one of the best footballers in the world. But I'm just using that as an analogy to say, you know, like you said, anyone could have a bad day. It's everyone. You know, human beings. It's it's all about growth. You know, and you don't grow without going through the hardships sometimes. You know, I think sometimes you have to suffer in life. You know, so I think sometimes you have to suffer in life in order to learn how to appreciate life and.
That's true.
And appreciate the good times, you know, when life is good, you know, and it makes you stronger as well, you know.
I think that's another thing that makes, you know, is wisdom really, is appreciating. You know, like if you understand that whatever your life is, that other people got it worse in a kind of way.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, look at what's going on right now in Turkey. You've got people that are they're still right now digging up people. You know what I mean? Digging up people right now. I'm just using that as an example because obviously that's happening right now, imminently in the world right now. But yeah, they've got a death toll. You know, probably close to 40,000 people they estimated already. I think roughly, and they're still finding people, still finding children and people under rubble, and and all sorts of stuff. You know, lots of people unaccounted for. Lots of people can't find their loved ones, you know. Lots of children can't find their mother and fathers, you know, who might have died and still trapped under rubble that they haven't dug up yet, you know. So, you know.
And this has happened all the way through history, do you know what
I
mean?
Of course, yeah.
You got to think about this, you know, like it's always happening.
Oh, of course.
All these things. But the thing is, what we've got today in this modern world, we've got TV. And whatever happens, and we've got the internet
and social media.
Yeah,
I think in all honesty, I think stuff gets shared faster.
That's right.
And more, gets more exposure today. Faster with social media.
Radio.
But, honestly, a lot of stuff that I end up telling you about, or end up like these news clips or whatever I might see occasionally, is usually Instagram.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean, you might click on the explore page, and it's obviously as soon as something's happened in the world, it's reported that it's there on the page. You know what I mean, alongside everything else that's usually
That's
there.
right. So we're living in it don't matter. Some like in this world, earthquakes and all sorts of things been always going on every decade. Every decade that's gone by, and there's been wars. And wars and wars and wars, you know.
Yeah.
Just got to go back in history every decade, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not been very wise, if you ask me. You know, like men always fighting.
Yeah, it's true.
With real bad weapons as well, you know. You think about it, we've got like nuclear bombs around our planet, and also a lot of other dangerous chemical weapons and all sorts, you know. And I think, hang on, what we're trying to do, kill ourselves, you know.
Yeah. But it seems like it, doesn't it?
We're not very wise here, are we? You know, we've got a very, very beautiful planet.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone's fighting over it. Well, man doesn't get on.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's just, like you said, it's crazy to think that we've got such a beautiful planet, we've got so much technology, we've all got so much knowledge and wisdom when it comes to farming and all sorts of shit. Like, we should just be all working together for everyone to have a great life. You know, and I believe, like you said, I know some people are kind of like, you don't really artificial intelligence too much, but I think if we could get to a point where certain jobs are taken over by artificial intelligence, so that instead of people having to work like crazy like they have to do all the time, that people can just live and enjoy their lives, if you see what I mean, you know? Why not have a society where lots of jobs are done by, and people can just live their lives, they don't have to work, you know what I mean? Everything's done and looked after and prepared, and everything still works and is produced the way it is today, because obviously they estimate we've got close to 9 billion people on the earth today, so obviously we still need food production, we still need factories, we still need all these things. So if we could get it to a point where it's completely artificial, you know, run by artificial intelligence, and it all works the way it should do, and it's all, you know, then why not? Because then people can just, like I said, can live and enjoy their lives. You know, people who can get rid of the whole idea of the whole 9 to 5, and people can stay out. People can, you know, everything's, you know, they've got their own house, they've got their own food and crops and everything else. You know, and you know, they can stay at home and, you know, enjoy their lives with their families and their children and their wives and whatever else, you know, do what they really love and enjoy, you know, instead of having to spend 50 or 60 years of their life at work. You know?
So I regret really sort of when I was married, doing some of the jobs that I was doing, do you know what I mean? I wish I didn't take them on in the first place. And I was just home with my wife more often, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know? Like, I think like, I mean, I could have been a lot wiser in life if I got brought up properly.
Yeah.
You know, I wish that was the case, you know, and I think like some children are very lucky, you know, because they've got very good parents. And they're pretty well off as well.
Yeah.
You know, so they're quite wise with money and they're comfortable.
Yeah.
And they've really sort of like, as you say, they've not gone into it quickly. They knew, both of them knew what they were doing in a kind of way, you know, and they took their time about it.
Yeah.
And they have got the perfect marriage, do you know what I mean? And they're perfect parents for their children to bring them up, and in every way, in a good way.
Yeah. In
a wise way, in a funny way, you know. And if you teach your child to be wise, they're you know, they've got, you know, by the time they're independent, when they leave school, you won't have to worry about them. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
I think. Do you know what I mean? If you teach your children to be wise, I mean, the trouble is there's a lot of parents out there are having children and they don't know what they're doing. You know, they get together and they have sex because it is fun. They don't really think about it, and then they got a bad child all of a sudden, and they're scratching their head about it, if you see what I mean. And sort of like, they don't even know, you know, they're not even growing up themselves, and you know, they're bringing up a child, you know.
Kids raising kids.
And I find it a bit, you know, I mean, that's why I think that's a good thing about schools in a funny way, you know, because all the children go to school and they pick up from each other in a kind of way, you know. So regardless if they got bad parents or not, the school saves them in a kind of way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I don't agree with schools entirely. You know, like I say, all the public schools to me, okay, they don't educate children to be wise to me. You know, they didn't teach me to be wise for one. Do you know what I mean? And I find that a little bit scary. That there's, you know, if you can imagine that everybody left school and they were taught compassion, wisdom, and all that kind of stuff. You know, and the schools were more perfect. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone was leaving school, and all the children were educated.
Well, that's it, mate. I think education needs to kind of be revamped. You know, it is very important, but it needs to be revamped. It needs to be kind of like reanalyzed, and people really need to implement more like real life skills and real things that are really important. Things that we've talked about in the past, like emotional intelligence and, like you said, learning empathy and compassion and
all kinds of things.
All kind of things, you know. Just.
But you think about all these subjects.
Preparing them for the world, you know, to be a good human being, you know, and to be a successful human being, you know.
So they don't teach a child to be self-employed, how to be a good business person, you know what I mean, all this sort of stuff. They don't teach you about the world out there at all. And I find that a little bit scary, and I don't understand why. If you see what I mean? Why don't we? Because I think all these little subjects like respect and all this sort of stuff, they could be an hour lesson every week. That's all. All it would take, you know, and all this science and all this maths. I don't find that very important to me. And history, it is important. Okay, all that, yeah, history and this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But what is important is wisdom, compassion, respect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and I think like what's going on there, you know. I know what's not going on, you know, because they don't put that hour lesson in. I think every day they should put an hour lesson in. Subject about happiness, about psychology, you know. Every hour, you know, I mean, I'd love to be a teacher to some children and teach them about wisdom, say, or another, you know, do you know what I mean? I'd love that,
Yeah.
you know. But where is it gone? It's invisible, isn't it, at schools? You know, it's not there. You know, I find it's, you know, like schools, to me, they got like fences going around them, usually with barbed wire on them too. Whatever. They look like little prisons to me, you know, where they go to get educated and, you know, but in a bad way. If you know, in the wrong way, if you ask me, you know. It's like they're being educated basically to leave school and go, you know, put an army uniform on or something, you know.
Well, it's just like preparation for the working world, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like preconditioning. That's how we look at it. It's like preconditioning. It's like, you know, because obviously it's Monday to Friday. You've got to wake up at a certain time in the morning, make sure you're there at a certain time in the morning, and then you finish at a certain time every day. And you're told when you can go for lunch. You know what I mean? You have a lunch break as you do at school, and the same thing applies when you go for work. They tell you when you can have your lunch break.
That's it.
And you know, it's just preconditioning. It's just preparing you for the 9 to 5
It's all
world.
to do with the clock, really. You know, when they invented the clock, quite a long time ago. You know, I think they invented the first mechanical clock, the year 1200.
Okay.
Okay. And it's in Salisbury Cathedral. Okay, the first mechanical clock. But if you go back to sort of when the Romans come out, about that time, they were putting sundials everywhere. And they were actually telling everyone to, right, you're not allowed to eat this time.
Yeah.
And when the bells go, you're allowed to eat this time.
Yeah.
You know? And this guy was sort of like, because I was watching this documentary and he was saying that when the Romans come, they brought these sundials in, and then they told us we're not allowed to eat this time and all that, and it kind of like chopped us up into whoever invented the hour